you probably don't know this, but I actually wear glasses most of the time, and these are my glasses. I don't wear them when I'm filming because then the light glares on them, but I kind of look like this girl, don't you think? Like, this is me. That's me right there. Boom. Welcome back to my channel. I am Dina Haynes, and I am reading to you my book called Neesa in the original reality book series. Spoilers are coming up, so this is the point in the video where you're definitely gonna want to go back and start from the beginning. There's a link below in the description as well as in the video because it is spoiler time. I'm just gonna go on record right now and call myself the queen of slow burn. It is now we're going into chapter 14, but we just did, the last chapter was chapter 13. And Neesa and Reuben finally went on a freaking date, or at least they're on the date. They're in the midst of the date. And how freaking cute was their little interaction at the house. Neesa was showing a house and Reuben surprised her as usual and caught her off guard. Just when he decides to back off from her, she agrees to go on a date with him. Like, how crazy is Neesa? And she booked 2 dates in like within a couple of hours. It's so crazy. So her debt with Annabelle is pretty much done. It's squashed. And finally we get to see the hero and the heroine together. Let's continue with chapter 14. We're gonna delve more into this date and see how it ends up. I hope you're dying to find out how this first date goes because I think it's going to be pivotal. Chapter 14, Reuben's perspective. Reuben was way out of his depth. He knew it, and yet he believed no one was more suited for him. He'd never known a woman who could raise the bar so high, no other woman stood a chance at reaching the top. He wanted to please her, make her laugh, be of service to her, protect her. A new experience blossomed within him. The focus of a relationship did not begin and end with his needs, his desires. His mother used to lecture him that, quote unquote, a real man takes care of his woman, but she never brought those kinds of men home. The men she introduced into his life pretended to be caretakers until they met him, and suddenly he was too much responsibility. He paid for the check, and afterward they risked life and limb again by crossing the busy street back to Denise's car. She put her hand on the driver's side door handle when Reuben spun her around. The excitement in her eyes thrilled him because, for once, he felt as if he was living. He kissed her, diverting her attention from the traffic whizzing by. A couple of cars honked, so he pulled her onto the sidewalk and stuck his credit card in the meter. Out of breath, she said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I know this place up the road where we can get a drink." Her dark eyes sparkled in the flashing headlights, transporting him 15 years into the past, when he was a 21-year-old with no responsibilities and the whole night ahead of him. He wanted to whisk her away to the beach in Malibu and make love to her in the sand under the moonlight. God, in a matter of hours, he turned into a damn Hallmark commercial. She laughed, and he was briefly horrified she'd read his mind until he became aware of the goofy smile curving his lips. Once the meter beeped, he triple-checked the posted parking restrictions, grabbed her hand and pulled her into the crook of his arm. She fit like a key he knew was missing but had never bothered looking for. He surmised she might be the answer to questions he'd never thought to ask, like why he ate high-fat, sugary foods and never felt sated, why he'd spent 5 years in the LAPD, been promoted to detective faster than any other rookie in his class, then bailed out of boredom, why he'd bought a house, fixed it up, and yet it still didn't feel like home. Home is where the heart is, right? His heart had taken its first real beat less than an hour ago. As they approached the bar, the bouncer tipped his head back in greeting. Reuben shook hands with the guy and held the door open for Denise as she slipped inside. The place was packed, but by luck, a couple near the door got up to leave. He snagged the tiny two-top and led Denise by the hand to the bench seat. He took the small wooden chair and was encouraged when she slid in close to him. He said close to her ear, "This place is famous for their whiskey." Loud conversations and even louder rock music forced them to be intimate. She said, "Actually, I'm not a big alcohol drinker. I'll take a soda with lime, though." He said, "How am I supposed to get you drunk so I can take advantage of you later?" She shrugged. "Guess you'll have to use your wits." He went to the bar and slapped palms with Craig, his friendly bartender. He was sporting a polka-dotted tie, and Reuben couldn't resist a little ribbing. "What, is the circus in town?" Craig said, "Aw, man, if you want to copy my style, why don't you just ask?" Reuben laughed as a glass appeared on the bar, and Craig poured amber liquid inside it over the ice cube. Reuben said, "Can you get me a soda with lime to go with that?" Craig's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, you got company?" He leaned over the bar, scanning the place to see what kind of tale Reuben had dragged in this time. Craig said, "That her in the corner?" "Damn," he said, planting a fist over his mouth. "You must have some serious game, because I know they're not after your pocketbook." Reuben said, "All right, this one's different, so keep it down." Craig said, "Different? You mean she's the one you told me about the other day?" Reuben nodded, and Craig leaned back with raised eyebrows. Craig said, "Does she know about you and the ladies?" He brought up a glass with ice and began spraying the soda gun into it. Reuben slipped him his credit card and said, "Yeah, ma'am, but this is the first date. I'm trying to secure a second, so do me a favor and don't embarrass me." Craig's smile hinted at mischief. "All right, so long as you bring her over here so I can meet her." He adjusted his bow tie. Reuben said, "Hell no, you keep your eyes off of her." "I see you. You're watching this video and you think I don't notice that you haven't hit the like button yet. Well, please do that now, because that helps my algorithm so that other people will find this video and start watching the series just like you're doing. Thank you so much. I appreciate it." Craig kept staring over at Denise as he hooked a lime on the edge of the soda glass. "Damn, Rube, she may be mixed, but I haven't seen you with the sister for like a minute." Reuben said, "What? She's Native American." Craig said, "Sure, dude, that's what they all say." He winked and Reuben frowned, turning with the drinks in his hand. Craig's laughter followed him all the way back to his seat. Reuben said, "Texting your girlfriends?" as he placed the drink in front of her while she stowed her cell phone. Denise said, "No, sending a few emails to the clients I saw today." "I can tell you like this neighborhood. Is the bartender your friend?" Reuben said, "Sort of. Part of the cop culture from when I was in the LAPD. Denise said, "Wait, you were a cop? Really?" Reuben said, "I'm just full of surprises tonight, huh?" Denise said, "I guess it makes sense with you being a PI and all. I just never imagined it." Reuben said, "You mean because you thought I was stalking you?" "Yeah, well, I'm glad that's behind us. I used to come here to unwind after duty. Craig was one of my informants, and we kept in touch after I left the department. I still use him sometimes. Bartenders meet a lot of people, hear a lot of stories, but enough about him." He held up his glass and she followed suit. "To second dates." Denise said, "Oh, is it in the bag now?" Reuben said, "You saying I haven't convinced you yet? Give me your phone. I'll just put myself in your calendar." She twisted her mouth into a wry grin and clinked her glass with his. After she took a sip, her brow furrowed. "Thanks for not acting weird earlier. Because of my hypoglycemia, I only drink on occasion. I'm good for the one. Any more than that, and I get all shaky. Talking about it makes me feel like a freak, you know?" The condition sounded serious. Reuben said, "So that's your one humanizing quality. I thought it might be jacked up toes or something else you can hide." Denise said, "What?" Her voice shook with laughter and confusion. He said, "You're so beautiful. I guess you have to have faults like the rest of us." Denise said, "Believe me, I have plenty of things wrong with me." All kinds of unfamiliar emotions choked him up. He said, "I'm not familiar with that condition you said you have. Anything else you have to stay away from?" Denise said, "Sweets, carbs. Basically, I have to eat healthy and often and get plenty of rest. I'm sort of forced to be good." Sounds boring, I know. She was vulnerable in ways he'd never expected. A fierce and sudden urge to protect her came over him. And then guilt because he'd bought her a beer without asking. The last thing he wanted was to make her ill. Reuben said, "Why didn't you tell me before? I wouldn't have ordered you a beer." Denise said, "Remember what I said about feeling like a freak? That's what I mean right there," she said, pointing a finger at his chest. "I'm okay. If it was a problem, I would have said something." "Oh, God, don't get that look." Reuben said, "What?" Her well-being was all he could think about. He kept envisioning her unconscious on the floor as he waited for the paramedics to arrive. He said, "I'm sorry, if I ruin this date, I'll kick my own ass up and down Sunset Boulevard." Denise said, "You're doing great so far." But he wasn't. All of a sudden, he couldn't look at her until her cold hands grabbed hold of his face and turned it. When her lips touched his, they set him on fire. His mind, a moment ago filled with doubt and despair, was now a glorious blank. Everything disappeared. The noise, the people, even the table between them disappeared, leaving a space he wanted to close with his body. But no sooner did the kiss begin than it ended. He caressed her cheek and found it warm beneath his fingertips. She batted her eyelashes. "Let's switch topics." He said, "Good idea. I should tell you that tactic, distracting me with kisses, will work every time." When she laughed, her eyes sparkled. She said, "Why did you quit being a cop?" His mouth twisted. He wondered how personal she'd expect him to get. He purposefully kept women in the dark about himself because knowledge was power, and he never wanted a woman to have power over him. With Denise, he felt none of that. He said, "I wanted to be my own boss, have more control over the cases I took." Her gaze sharpened, and she said, "And? I see a story hiding in there somewhere." He said, "Are you kidding? I've been more honest with you than anyone." She said, "Then tell me, what was your life-changing moment? I've already told you mine." The people, the bar, the sounds all muted as his mind went back in time. His mother had died not too long before he quit the force. She dedicated a good portion of her life to finding his father, and he felt compelled to complete the task before he died, in her honor. Reuben knew the guy's name, but only as someone his mother blamed for their unfortunate circumstances. Using his official resources, he was able to paint a bigger picture of who the guy might be and where he might live. It was all still speculation since he hadn't taken the next step, visitation and hence confirmation. Fear had stalled him out for almost 5 years. The heat from Denise's hand caressed his thigh, bringing him back to the present. The compassion in her eyes shocked him at first. What did he do to deserve her concern? He peered down at her mouth, wanting to kiss her again. He much preferred physical intimacy than the emotional kind. He said, when my mom died, I decided to search for my father. I told you earlier I never met him." He struggled to get the words out, embarrassed to tell her the ugly truth of his childhood. "My mom wasn't much of a role model. She was a dancer, then a Vegas showgirl, then she had me. I became the last nail in the coffin of her dreams." On the outside, he chuckled to make light of the situation, though inside the emotional cancer ate away at him. It was too soon to unload his darkest secrets, but sitting knee to knee with the added comfort of Denise's hand on his thigh, he felt sort of safe. And he hadn't done anything to deserve it except put his foot in his mouth and try to poison her with alcohol. He said, "I can't believe I said that stuff to you. Those thoughts are on lockdown up here." He tapped his temple. "I don't usually think about those things, let alone say them out loud." She said, "Do you regret telling me?" He let out a nervous laugh. "I don't know. You've put a spell on me or something." Her mouth lifted at the corners, revealing perfect white teeth. His impulse to kiss her again grew stronger by the second. She asked, "Did you find him?" He said, "Huh? Yeah, well, maybe. I haven't made contact with him yet. I almost wish I could nab him for back child support. My mom devoted so much of her life to that singular cause. I think it's what killed her." She said, "How's that?" Reuben said, "She died of a heart attack, but she was an alcoholic up until the end." Denise said, "I doubt she's on the other side worried about that old crusade anymore." He said, "You didn't know my mother." She said, "When are you going to meet him?" He glanced away and shook his head before downing half his drink. The whiskey's burn, punishing his throat on the way down. He was no closer to answering that question than he'd been 4 years ago when he put together a file on the man. Denise said, "You went through all that trouble to find him and you won't go and meet the guy? Why not?" Reuben said, "The bastard should have come forward. My mother wasn't fit to take care of a child. He should have been there." Denise said, "You're angry." He nodded. "Yeah." She nodded too. "Understandable. But you're a grown man now. You can't get your childhood back, but you might still be able to have a relationship. At the very least, some much needed closure." Reuben tossed his head back and grunted, then leaned in again. "I can already tell what you're going to say next. Some bullshit about forgiving him." He shook his head. "Hell no." Denise said, "That's unfortunate. Forgiveness is the only way you'll get past this. It's not the same as saying what he did was okay, but rather a way to accept that it's in the past and unchangeable. Sounds like you're ready to end this chapter and move on from it, seeing as how you found him and all." He hung on every word, and each one had the ring of truth to it, but he couldn't deny the stubborn pull to stay angry. He was born with it, as sure as if his mother had implanted the rage inside him. He wanted his father to pay for what he'd done. It mattered that the bastard knew what pain he had caused, important that he claim it. But then what? Reuben had never bothered to look that far ahead. He downed the rest of his drink and said, "I can't let it go, not yet. Is that what you've done, let go of the past with your ex?" She laughed, but it was bitter, and said, "Oh, did I not mention it's a process? Yes, I've accepted what happened, but I'm still left with these hang-ups. I guess I can't preach then. We both have something to let go of. Are we crazy that we'd rather hold on to that crap than leave it all alone? We're like pigs wallowing in shit. Wait, pigs love shit. No, we're humans wallowing in shit, and it's torture." He said, "Humans and shit, huh?" They both nodded and shared misery until Denise's laughter suddenly stopped. Ben asked, "What happened? What's the matter?" Denise said, "Oh, nothing. It just reminded me of Annabelle. I don't know. I don't want to tell her business, but I worry about her. I guess I'll just say I don't like her husband very much." Reuben's ears perked up at the mention of Jeff Schaefer. He'd heard her talk about Schaefer before while she was under surveillance, and he was surprised by how little she knew about her friend's husband. Denise said, "I've never met the guy, but I know he's a jerk." Reuben couldn't agree more. He wished he could share his opinion with her. Denise continued, "She's not happy, you know. He's like a dark cloud following her wherever she goes, planting bad thoughts in her head. I've been where she's at and just wish I could fast forward to the part where she realizes he's not worth the misery he's caused. And then tell him to fuck off. Fuck off, Jeff." Reuben sat back. "Wow, tell me what you really think." Denise said, "Right? Did you feel that?" Felt good to say it out loud. Reuben nodded and she laughed. If only she knew that David was the same guy she despised so much. He said, "You've never met the guy, huh?" Denise took a sip of her drink. "No, never seen a picture of him, nothing. They say the devil shows no reflection, so maybe the same goes for pictures." Reuben said, "I think that's vampires." Denise said, "He's sucking the life out of her for sure. I might punch him in the face if I ever meet him." He wanted to tell her the truth right then, but he was scared of the possible blowback the news would have. He didn't want to hurt Denise or Annabelle if she found out her husband had been investigating her. The way things were going on this date with Denise, he might not have to say a word. "He's a real creep, huh?" Denise said, "Oh, one of those guys who's so insecure with himself that he has to make the person closest to him feel lower than dog shit. I can't tell Annabelle that. She's got to live with the guy. I try to encourage her to want better for herself, but she's the one who has to put her foot down. I can't do it for her. My mom taught me that. Life's too short to solve other people's problems for them. Everything she says nowadays begins with 'life's too short.'" Reuben said, "What about what you said earlier about forgiveness and all?" Denise said, "There's nothing to forgive. He isn't hurting me. That's up to Annabelle when she stops the abuse. You and me have different fish to fry. Who knows? Maybe you're here to teach me how to forgive my ex." He wondered if she heard herself. Her words pointed toward a hopeful future for their relationship, and far be it from Reuben to correct her. Reuben said, "As far as I'm concerned, your ex did you a favor. I personally want to thank the guy. But if you're not in a forgiving mood, class is in session. I'll teach you the error of your ways. In the name of forgiveness, of course." She pushed him on the shoulder and laughed. That's the end of chapter 14. Please like the video, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon. And I'll see you for the next chapter, chapter 15.